All right. So, as a leader, understanding and assessing yourself at any point in your leadership journey is amazingly important. So, in order to do that, having the right tools in front of you to assess your skill set and define where you need to go is amazingly essential. So, what I want to talk about is the feedback instruments, and specifically the feedback instrument that I used in my leadership development plan. So, Mark Murphy has an assessment online, and I'll leave the link in this post, in which he has an assessment called the Leadership IQ. Now, what I liked most about this is it was short, it was sweet, and it really helped me define where I am right now as a leader. And it even does a great job at comparing your leadership style to other successful leaders. Because that's the thing, being a leader is not a single style. All of us have a style in which we put in our leadership, and our leadership executes our style. No one style is better than the other. Some have pros and some have cons. So when I took the Leadership IQ, it described me as a diplomatic leader. And I found that very, very interesting, because if you would have asked me 2 years ago if I was a diplomatic leader, I would have told you no. Simply because I feel like as a leader in my leadership roles, I've gone closer to putting the benefit of community and collaborative inclusion into the way that I work. I no longer give direction unless necessary. I always look for insight and support ideas and thoughts. And so when I got when I took the assessment, I found that I was actually a diplomatic leader. I was a little taken back in a good way, because that wasn't something that I ever thought that I would get better at. But because honestly, the biggest thing that helped me change is leadership above me. When I would define myself more as an authoritative leader about 3-4 years ago, when I was a little bit younger and a lot less better looking. No, I'm kidding. That doesn't help at all. So a few years ago, I had a leader over me who was very authoritative herself. Now, what that required of me is very black and white thinking. And when you have very black and white thinking, it's only your black and white. So other people's opinions, thoughts don't seem to be as relevant. Sometimes you need very decisive leadership. Sometimes you don't. So when this leader chose to go on and pursue another venture, and the leader following her is very diplomatic themselves, looking for insight and feedback. And so in being able to give my feedback, I looked for feedback in other people, and I actually really like where I'm at as a leader. So the Leadership IQ defined me as a diplomatic leader, and I'm really interested on where it's going to define you. So now once you've assessed yourself, once you use something like that and you've assessed where you're at as a leader, you have to identify both the pros and the cons, the advantages and the disadvantages of your leadership style. So what I want to go over is, for the diplomatic leader, just like myself, some of the qualities that go into that. I tend to focus on how they can help others, which is true. They establish a goal driven around a community. So it's not just the leader's goal, it's the goal that benefits the community or surrounds the community. And diplomatic leaders tend to value community as a whole and individual members within them, which is really interesting, because I've gotten a whole lot better at that. Some of the advantages to a diplomatic leader: it builds strong, close-knit, and focused teams. The diplomatic leader is very focused on the relationship of the team. So keeping harmony and things like that, that's important to a diplomatic leader, which wasn't too important with me a few years ago, but I've grown. A diplomatic leader focuses on big picture and permanent change. And I think that's me to a T. I'm always in that 100,000 foot view, that conceptual view. And the best way to describe it is I always feel like I'm playing a mental chess match. And in order to do that, I have to be above the game, and I have to know all the pieces around me to ultimately get my pieces closer to what success looks like. So that was really interesting, and I agree. And this is my favorite one: inspires worker and managerial loyalty. I firmly believe that my mission in life is to inspire others to reach their maximum potential. And I have the ability to do that through maybe leadership, through coaching, through development, through personal training, through the Army. Every position that I've had the blessing of being in has allowed me to inspire others. And I think inspiration is what is the difference between a transformational leader and a transactional leader. And so I was really excited to read that. Let's talk about disadvantages, because there's some downfalls to a diplomatic leader, just like any other leadership style. Some of the downfalls is I depend heavily on loyalty and trust, right? So when there is a lack of loyalty, a lack of trust, that disrupts kind of the harmony within my leadership style, and maybe it'll take away from my focus. It says does not define or structure roles. And That's a disadvantage because sometimes when things get gray, it's because the role or structure wasn't defined in the beginning. So that happens sometimes. But to be honest, a lot that I hire people with very big picture thinking, and I allow them to grow. My job is to do two things: is to hire people that are 10 times better than me and get anything out of their way for them to reach their maximum potential. And the last disadvantage of a diplomatic leader is they require an existing system to change or fix. Diplomatic leaders, because we're so weird saying we, because we aren't as structured in our thought process. The coming on to a structure makes it easier for us to be diplomatic. Now, if there wasn't any structure and we were put in a leadership position, we couldn't really be diplomatic. We would just be another person in the community. So I know there was a long blurb about the feedback instruments, but I think it's super important that you understand not only how to get feedback, but how to use that feedback. And so what you'll find is I did my very best to use these advantages and disadvantages in my leadership development plan. Next section, we're going to go over goals and objectives.